Welcome back, everybody, to our first Wellbeing Wednesday of 2024. So, Happy New Year to everybody. If this is your first time joining, welcome. And if you are joining us again, welcome back. We're really excited to have you here. So, if you are new, this is our Wellbeing Wednesday monthly segment, which is the show all about childcare providers and how we can take care of ourselves, because actually taking care of ourselves is taking care of others. So really kind of connecting those two ideas. I'm your host, Susanna Creed with Be Well, Care Well, which is a program all about supporting staff wellness and the well-being of our early child care providers. So we are very excited about this month's theme, which is fitness forward, new year, new resolutions. So a lot of times physical fitness is one of those big areas that people want to focus on. People want to maybe reconnect with their goals, set some new goals. So we thought that this would be really fitting in January, and we are super excited to have one of our very own Curricula Concepts team members here with us today. So we have Jessica Moreland joining us, and she has been with our team since 2020. If you haven't gotten to meet her yet, she's a wonderful trainer, and she has been leading the way with our trainings about children's nutrition and health and wellness. This also stems from her own passion and her own continuous health journey, and she believes that activity and nutrition are key important factors when it comes to developing lifelong learners in ourselves and in our children. So, Jess, we're really excited to have you, and thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Susanna.
Yeah. So we will be monitoring the chat throughout. So for those of you who are watching, if you have specific fitness questions or aha moments, please feel free to share those in the comments with us. And as we go through, if there are questions, we'll kind of address those. But to kind of kick us off, Jess, I was thinking, with the new year upon us, a lot of us, like I said, want to increase our physical fitness. We want to improve our overall health. And so for those adults who are wanting to do this, especially those who maybe are parents or are childcare providers, what suggestions do you have, either from your professional experience or your own personal experience, for how to incorporate more physical activity into our daily lives?
Yeah, so I think my first suggestion is to start small. So any physical activity counts as physical activity. If that means we can get little, I think what we call movement snacks, where you get like 10 minutes of movement here, 10 minutes of movement there. Um, it doesn't have to be something long and drawn out, 30 minutes, an hour. You can start just wherever you are and do what you can do. I think probably my second suggestion is that you find a group. You find some people to do it with, whether it's just you and a mom friend as a parent walking with your kids in the stroller around at nap time or right before nap time, or whatever the case may be. Or if it's finding you a friend, if you can't get together and do things together, then at least have a partner to kind of hold you accountable to what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad that you mentioned the starting small and kind of breaking that down. So I know last year personally, I started to look up kind of what are just the general adult guidelines for physical activity. And one of the things is like bare minimum, at least 20 minutes of movement. And as a remote worker, a lot of times it's very easy for me to just not, right? To just
Yeah.
not do
Yeah.
any physical activity, not move places. I'm like, I went up and down the stairs once or twice today. That
Hmm.
counts. But I started to think, okay, how can I incorporate more movement? And to me, the idea of taking, because I zone in with work, and I think a lot of
Hmm.
us do that, where you're in the zone, you don't want to break that concentration. But what I started to do is breaking it into micro breaks, because the idea of taking a full 20-minute break for physical activity kind of seemed daunting when I wasn't really doing much. So instead,
Hmm.
I would maybe do 5 minutes 4 times throughout my workday. And so for one of those 5 minutes, I set a timer and I just kind of walked around the block until the timer
Hmm.
went off. And then I went back to work. Maybe right before lunch, I went up and down the stairs for 5 minutes. And breaking it down into those small things was really helpful. And I love that you mentioned the groups as well. So with Be Well, Care Well, that's a lot of times what we call kind of the secret sauce, is that social component. Because if I'm going to go to a Zumba class, right, and I'm just signing up, well, if it's just me and I just don't feel like going, I can just not go. But if a friend is
Right.
meeting me, that friend is going to be like,
Yeah.
I went, where were you? What happened? You're more likely to do it. So it's that positive peer pressure. And with the 20 minutes that I was talking about earlier, actually one of my coworkers and I, we said, why don't we try to get 5 minutes in each day? And like we were going to message each other when we did it. And if we were struggling, we were going to message each other. And that's actually how I started towards that 20 minutes. And
Yeah.
now more often than not, I do it. And I get the
Mhm.
full 20 minutes in. So those two things are super important. And I don't know if you can maybe share any kind of personal examples from either your own life where you've kind of incorporated those things, or if you've, worked with people who maybe have kind of tried out different methods and kind of how that went for
Mhm.
them. I'd just love to hear any of
Mhm.
your personal stories about that.
So personally, I was an athlete my whole life, so I didn't have to exercise on my own because it was just part of my day. Like that was just basketball practice, softball practice, whatever it was, that was
Hmm.
just built into my day. And so then, whenever I stopped playing sports and became an adult and did adult things, I found it really hard to find those times to dig in and do what I like to do. Um, my own personal preference is a CrossFit style. That is just what I've come to love since one of our other coworkers drew me in there, uh, Miss Robbie Ballou. But
Hmm.
it's been really something really awesome for me because of the the enjoyment level. It's something that I enjoy doing, but it's the community piece is huge there. There's something about shared suffering, and then as I've, I've gotten older and I'm starting to find my way differently. I've just had to come to peace with I just do what my body feels like it needs to do that day. So sometimes I don't do whatever's written on the board for our workout that day or whatever's given to me. I have to listen to what my body and do what feels good. And I think that applies to our kids too. Like I talked to in one of my trainings this morning about yoga. When kids are doing yoga, this we may have an idea of what this pose looks like, but our kids may not be able to do that, and that's okay. They're moving their body the way their body feels like it needs to be. And so I think one thing to remember is that fitness and exercise is just a constant journey. You're just constantly figuring out new things about yourself and your body and the way things feel, and it's going to change over time. You're going to feel more comfortable with different things at different times.
Yeah. And it's kind of almost developing that curiosity, right? Like
Hmm.
kids and our children, when they move, like they're not following a prescription. They're just moving when they feel they need
Right.
to, and they're not when they're not. And but they have a curiosity about it. There's not as much judgment with it. And
Hmm.
actually we're more likely to move typically when we're younger and kids and more curious. And so maybe even just the idea of bringing in some of that curiosity of like, oh, I'm curious to see how my body feels when I do this, or I'm curious if I try something different, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
um and actually, that kind of leads into a beautiful crosswalk here of, for those parents, especially maybe who are like, I need to move more, but I have work, then I have to prep my food for the kids, then I'm taking care of my
Hmm.
kids, and I still want to spend time with my kids. And they feel like they kind of have to do this either or, right? It's either I go to the
Hmm.
gym or I spend time with my kids or I rest. So I wonder if you can maybe share with us any tips or examples or ideas of how to incorporate physical activity into family time so it's kind of this quality and not an either or decision where
Hmm.
and that kind of brings in the social aspect with the family, but I just love to kind of pick your brain and see what you have on that.
Yeah, so first let me say that it's not easy for me as someone who does exercise regularly. I'm not going to say that that is something that I have perfected and figured out. That it is a struggle across the board or a challenge across the board. Um, some great ways that I've learned to do things with my kids are walks, bike rides, going for hikes are a great way to get outdoors and just see a different environment, and your kids are a lot more engaged in the walk and in the conversation. It can be just going to the playground with your kids. It requires a little less thinking on your part about how you're going to move, because they're going to want you to move in certain ways, push them on the swings, or walk across, do the monkey bars, or whatever it might be. So those are just, you don't have to create something new, but you can, let your children lead. One of the things that I did when I was staying home with my boys, who are almost 7 now, but we created obstacle courses in the driveway all the time. So I'd get out our sidewalk chalk and we'd make like a little hopscotch. So, and I'd put the numbers in it so they were seeing the numbers, and then it might say like do 5 jumps. And so and I would just add in those gross motor skills that I thought that they were, or that they were ready to work on throughout this little obstacle course, and they would do it over and over again. And it was great for me, because I would have to demo those things for them and model that for them so that they could see how to move. And it was just a thing that we could do together. So
Yeah, I love all of those ideas, and kind of this idea too of follow the leader with your
mhm,
kids. The kids
mhm.
will oftentimes want us to move more than we naturally would. And I know for myself, I'm like, oh, I'm tired, or I'm
Yeah,
lazy, or I don't feel
yeah,
like moving. But every once in a while, maybe thinking like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to follow the leader with them,
mhm,
within reason, obviously, but like
yeah,
them with kind of how they're leading you, and that can be almost like a following their curiosity too, not just their physical movement, but follow that curiosity and engage with them. And maybe that'll bring in some curiosity about yourself and your own physical body with that.
mhm,
So I love all of those ideas. um and I guess too, especially you're in early childhood, right? You know so much about gross motor patterns and different developmental things. Say, we have a parent who's watching, or a family member who's watching, who maybe doesn't have that background. What can they maybe do to learn about those gross movement patterns and developmental patterns, so that they can also bring that knowledge to either their kids or their grandkids, their nieces, their nephews? But yeah, just for kind of anybody who's not necessarily in the education sphere, how would they go
okay.
about learning those things so that they could bring that to their family kid time?
Okay, so the biggest thing, the first thing I think that's probably the easiest, is the CDC website has these milestone checklists that are great, that I encourage teachers to use, but parents could use them as well. That you can look at and see, at 6 months, what should my child be doing? Well, I can't force a 6-year-old to do things that are not on that list, right?
Mhm.
And versus like I feel like sometimes we don't know what they should be doing, so we're pushing them to do these things that they're not ready for. So like
Mhm.
throwing, they may not be ready for throwing until 5 or 6, and yet here we are at 3 trying to make sure. I'm just picturing my husband, honestly,
Yeah.
out in the yard trying to force my kids to have good throwing form. Like that, they're not ready for that. And so, like I said, the CDC website, these are free for everyone. Milestone checklists is what they are, and
Mhm.
they're a great resource to have. I know Curricula Concepts has several trainings that kind of cover those things as well, that we would love to help you with if that is something
Mhm.
that you're interested in or have questions about.
Yeah, and for any of the educators who are watching, or for family members who are watching, I know some of those include our Move It trainings. Some
Mhm.
of those include the trainings that you lead as well, Jessica, kind of the child nutrition, the infant and child physical activity. So you focus a lot in
Yes.
this area, which is why I was really
Yeah.
excited to bring you on today. So if anybody's curious, you can check those out on our website too. We also have some like responsive caregiving, different parenting with purpose workshops as well. So check that out on our website. We'll include that link down below. And what we'll probably do as well in the comments is we'll try to put in those milestone checklists that you're mentioning from the CDC, so anybody
Okay.
can kind of join in with that. Um,
Yeah.
and we do
Another
have.
thing I would
Mhm.
say is like just thinking about it being fun. So, whenever we're trying to force our kids, because we played t-ball at, in first grade or kindergarten, and we were the best on our team, whatever, we're trying to force our kids into this and make them practice in all these different forms. they're going to learn best by playing games and having fun. And so we have to think of that more. My kid's soccer coach this past fall did an amazing job of just turning everything into a game. So they were having to practice dribbling the soccer ball without looking down at the soccer ball, and the goal was moving. Like they had it was an unstationary, non-stationary goal, and so it was she had people moving around with this goal, and so they had to look up and see where they were going, like sharks and minnows with the dribbling the
Mhm.
or with the ball. So they learn more by just playing games and having fun than this rigid, okay, we're going to dribble the soccer ball from here to there and then back, and then that's what it was. So I think there's got to be a good balance between that kind of stuff, but also having fun and making it fun for them.
Yeah, and I think, not only when we're looking to get physical activity for our kiddos, whether that's in a classroom, whether that's our family members, we as adults, I think a lot of times we forget that actually the things
Mhm.
that worked for kids can also work for us. Because if you think about, as you were
Mhm.
talking, I was like, oh, imagine I have to go to the gym and I have to do 18 reps and I have to do this and it's
Have
very
to, yeah.
rigid.
Mhm.
And why am I gonna wanna do that? It sounds so boring. But if I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm gonna go play a pickup game of pickleball with some friends,"
Mhm.
So finding ways to kind of bring back that same idea, but for ourselves as adults, And actually, there's a lot of stuff going into some more research about functional movement, and functional movement is how our body just moves naturally with normal kind of daily motions and how our muscle groups work together. So, for instance, just doing single bicep curls, right? Well, that
Mhm.
might not be super functional because it's isolating just one muscle group. But if I'm reaching down and picking up a heavy medicine ball and using my legs and my quads and my glutes and my arms to lift up that ball, that's more functional. And so,
Yeah.
actually, a lot of times playing games and gamifying our workouts or our physical activity creates more functional movement patterns and allows us to grow stronger in ways that help with our balance, help with kind of our daily activities of living. So if you're doing all of these things, you might find, well, the next time I have to move houses or move apartments or move anywhere, it might be easier
Mhm.
because your body knows how to function in that way. And
Mhm.
so it's all those
Definitely.
little things that kind of come back to we can learn from our kiddos. Even if we
Mhm.
don't have kids, like I don't have kids myself, but I can still take that idea and say, huh, how can I make it a little bit more fun for me? And that's where, again, bringing that social component in
Mhm.
of how am I bringing in a friend to say, hey, I'll bet that I can get a walk around the block today. Like that's my goal. Like I got this.
Mhm.
And maybe I motivate myself sometimes because that's when I'll listen to my podcast or that's when I'll listen to some comedy or something. And it's like incorporating something fun with it. And somebody mentioned in the comments as well that they get in their steps with their kiddos. And so a great thing to do as a family or even, at work is after a meal, take a quick 5-minute walk, or maybe just a walk
Mhm.
around the block or around the building or down the hallway. That helps with digestion. It helps you get in some movement. A lot of times it helps kind of stave off that, afternoon slump or that
Mhm.
slump after dinner. So incorporating those steps. And during that time, it's like, well, maybe we do a check-in during that time, a family check-in.
Mhm.
So those are some really great ideas too. And I see a bunch of smiley faces with it, so I'm not sure if this is true, but I think this is hysterical and adults would enjoy this, is this idea of toddler boot camp. Um, I think that we ourselves as adults, how much fun does that sound like? Like, okay, I'm gonna go through a toddler boot camp of like, because think about it, trying to mimic the movements of a toddler as an adult, that is really hard, but that is all
Yes.
functional movement. Like,
Mhm.
but it also sounds kind of ridiculous and fun. It might have been a boot camp for the toddlers, but I totally took it as one for the adults. And I'm like, let me look that up. Like, I'm gonna find some YouTube videos on it. But like that kind of fun, bringing something
Yeah.
fun with it.
Mhm.
So yeah. Anyway, sorry, I talked a whole bunch I just got really excited about all these ideas. Um, but I want to see, one of the hardest things too is how to stay motivated and consistent. Sometimes it's easier to start something, but to keep it up is a little bit harder. So, Jess, I wanted to see if you had any ideas, tips and tricks, or things that you've even tried in your own life that have helped you stay motivated and consistent when it came to incorporating physical activity into your day?
So, just as far as my motivation is ultimately the community aspect of my gym because I love being, especially because I was a stay-at-home mom, and so that was my hour to be with other adults and be with other people. So that's the biggest one for me. As moving forward, I would really like to put those movement snacks into my day, and I need to just put them into my calendar and make myself a reminder to get up and move for 5 minutes. I'm usually not sitting down, but I would like to, take that 5 minutes to just have that mental break to step away, just to kinda help my brain function a little better. And then the other thing too that I talk about in my trainings is goal setting, and that's a big one for me, is that we can set long-term goals, but we need to set short-term goals as well. Like we might have a long-term goal of, running a 5K, but we can't start out week 1 and try to get to running a 5K and expect to be there in 3 weeks, right? If we've never ran before. We need to set something that's sustainable that we can reach. That way we can have those little parties for ourselves and pat ourselves on the back and what it just to feel good about ourselves. And that's a big thing that I see sometimes is that people come in with these big, grandiose goals that they're not going to be successful at for a really long time. So then they're going to be frustrated and see slumps and give up before they get there. So setting something like a week at a time or 3 weeks at a time so that you can, and whenever you reach that goal, maybe you give yourself a little gift or you get to, you order yourself a new, I know some of the people I have worked out with in the past will like buy, if I do this, I get to buy myself a new pair of running shoes if I make it through, 3 days or not 3 days, but 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever. If I can commit to it that long, then I can buy myself that new pair of running shoes to help me get through the rest of it, kind of thing. So I think setting attainable goals is a big key to being successful in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, and that's, I think, why we have short term, medium term, long term goals. A lot of times, the way that I'll do it is I'll kind of set that long term goal, but then I'll break it down. Like I'll set like an annual goal or something or a
Hmm.
quarterly goal, but then I break it down to what do I need to accomplish each month? And then based on that, like, what do I need to do each week? And then kind of what do I need to do each day? So I have that long term goal that I am still working towards. So I feel like I have that, but I also have the smaller goals that'll help me feel successful along the way. Because it is so important, for us to feel like, oh, I did that. I can
Hmm.
trust myself. I did accomplish this, that sort of thing. And so I
Yeah.
think that that's a really valid point that a lot of times we don't necessarily think about when it comes to physical activity, but it's so true. Like that's why, for 1 week or actually just even today, I'm like, okay, can I get 10 minutes of physical activity in at some point after work, and if I can do that, like that's going to be in the win column today. Like maybe
Yes.
that's a
Yeah.
walk or something like that.
Hmm.
Or maybe even before I get in my car to go home, because I'm out of the home office right now. Can I do 2 block? Actually, I'm going to do that. I'm committing to that right here on this live that I'm going to take 3 loops around this building in total before I get into my car to go home. And I'm gonna kind of
Yeah.
time and just see how long that takes me, because that might take 3 minutes, or because I have really short legs, that might take up 10 minutes. Who knows? But it's like, let me be curious about, I wonder how long it takes when I just kind of leisurely take a walk around this building.
Yeah.
So um again, building in kind of that curiosity, building in that fun that you were talking about and enjoyment, gaming and gamifying things like this, um, going in with that social component and really figuring out kind of how do I create a community, even if that's just one person, and how to incorporate physical activity with our children or in our work or with our coworkers, so
Mhm.
that it's a part of our lives, and setting those small term goals or short-term goals and long-term goals, and using the short term as ways to make steady progress while also being sure that we basically build in this sense of accomplishment as we go.
Right.
So, those are some of the key takeaways that I'm kind of taking from our conversation today. But I know you actually have to get back to another training. But before we move to
Yes.
close, I want to see if there's any other last insights that you want to share, any other comments, anything I missed, but just kind of want to open it up to you, Jess, if there's any last things you want to share with us.
Well, your summary was great, Susanna. The only other thing I would add for our educators out there is this goal setting piece can be found in Go Knapsack for your health and wellness areas of your classroom. And that's something that is free to childcare providers in the state of Arkansas that you guys can use as a tool to help you set goals in the area of health and wellness and create action plans and then act on those with lots of tips and resources and materials. So that is something that I would suggest you check out. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me or Susanna. She can get you in touch with the right person.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in the comments down below for all those watching now and the replay, we'll include Jessica's email as well as the Curricula Concepts website. So if you want to, join any of those trainings, you can scroll to the bottom of our training page and it has our calendar and you can register right there. Or if you're interested in a training, especially health and wellness related, Jessica is a great person to reach out to see, if she can come do trainings like that. So really, we're here to support you and we want to walk you through these resources so that you feel confident, so that you feel excited kind of moving into the new year on a personal level and professionally. So with that, like I said, I know that you have to head to a training, but Jessica, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I know that this was really great for me and was very helpful. And I think it was helpful for a lot of the people who are commenting here today. So as we move to close, everyone, make sure if you don't already to follow Curricula Concepts on Facebook and Instagram so you don't miss a thing, where we share resources, upcoming trainings, Wellbeing Wednesday resources as well. And if you like today's show, please feel free to share it with your friends, family, and coworkers. And if you're a childcare provider and want to learn more about supporting your own staff wellness and enroll in Be Well Care Well, you can check out the link that is in the comments down below. We are accepting some applications and programs right now, so I encourage you to apply. And with that, this has been another Wellbeing Wednesday. I'm your host, Susanna Creed, and I'm wishing you all well in 2024. We'll see you next month. Bye.